Welcome to the last session for the day today, From Playground to Pension, Designing Policies for Digital Skills. In this session, we are going to talk about what are digital skills and what are some of the policy mechanisms that are needed to align the needs in industry and in the labor market with the skills that are being taught. We'll also discuss who needs to play an important part, what are some of the priorities, and what are some of the differences when it comes to different regions within UK. So we are going to use Slido for audience interaction, so do add your questions, and you will be able to rate each other's questions, and we'll pick out some of the questions from there to use in the Q&A. We'll also run some polls and get you to talk to each other as well. So what we're going to do is ask the panelists to introduce themselves, and then they'll each be making a short presentation on the priorities from the perspective of government, from the perspective of industry, and the perspective of how do we bring more diversity into not just the tech sector, but across different industries when it comes to digital skills. So with that, I'm going to introduce you to the panelists.
So I'm Navroza Ladha. I head the Digital Skills and Inclusion team in the Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport.
Hi, I'm Alina Dimofte. I work in the Google Policy team here in London, and I lead our policy development and delivery around education and skills.
I'm Knivett. I am the head of partnerships for the Corsham Institute, which is a small not-for-profit, and I was previously a digital skills policy lead for the Mayor of London.
Okay, so up on the screen, we have a question around why are digital skills important? One, is it just to access information, run some search, and get what you want? Is it to communicate and collaborate? Or is it to make your life more efficient and streamline what you're doing? Or is it to really solve problems and create solutions? So if you can take a minute to just answer the poll. So the counter is going up quite slowly. I'm going to let you guys have a think while we just ask each of you to make your presentation around the perspective from your end. What are digital skills and what are your organization's priorities? And we'll come back to that.
Okay. So the UK is one of the highest ranked European countries for digital skills. But the demand for digital skills is increasing. It's predicted that we'll probably need about another 1 million more people for digital skills roles by 2023. But, and this is the thing, digital skills are becoming increasingly important and increasingly embedded in the world around us. A significant proportion of all the jobs that we do across the economy require some level of digital skills knowledge. And increasingly, people need digital skills in every aspect of their life, as more public services go online, as more private services go online. So in the government's digital strategy in March, we set out that for the UK to be a world-leading digital economy, we really needed to make sure that we gave everybody the digital capabilities that they needed. And that meant the basic digital skills that we need to fully participate in society, those general digital skills that are increasingly needed in every job, in every sector, through to those advanced digital skills that we need in specialist roles across the economy. And here's the thing, the education and training system sits underneath all of that. It is absolutely key to making sure that we can have that digital capability across that spectrum. But here's the challenge. Unlike maths, unlike English, digital skills are evolving all the time, and that's because technology is evolving all the time. So from a government perspective, in terms of what we're doing about it, you would have heard Imran from the Department for Education earlier today, some of you say some of the things that we are doing. And I thought it would be just worth noting some of the things so you can understand what the sort of government-led initiatives are across that spectrum. So in 2014, we introduced a more rigorous computing curriculum. in the schools in England, and we just announced in the budget a new 84 million package to upskill teachers so they really have the confidence to teach this subject effectively. You heard about earlier, I think you've heard about it in a couple of sessions actually, the reforms to the technical education system through the 15 prestigious routes. Digital will underlie all of those, but equally we will have a digital T level. Last year, we launched the ADA National Digital Skills College, which you heard. I mean, it really is an amazing institution. We're going to provide £20 million for the new Institute of Coding to focus on digital skills provisions in higher education, £170 million for new institutes of technology to increase the provision of higher level technical skills, including digital. In terms of adult education, we fund the government's Future Digital Inclusion Project, which is run by the Good Things Foundation, using their online census networks to give people basic digital skills. For adults who lack core basic digital skills, we're going to make specified basic digital skills training available free of charge to mirror the approach taken for adult literacy and numeracy training. National Retraining Scheme, you heard a little bit about that earlier today for those of you who were listening to Imran, to help people reskill and upskill as the economy changes, including as a result of automation. Now, I've done that civil service thing where I've just completely pitched what government is doing, but the message behind that is that we understand that this is a big problem and we're trying to do things across the pipeline. But that isn't actually the message I want to leave you with. The message I want to leave you with is that isn't going to be enough. And we can't do this by ourselves. Government shouldn't do it by themselves. We just would fail. And what we really need is our partners. We need to work with our partners across the different sectors to come together and work in a more collaborative way. And partners are already doing that. Partners are already saying to us, government, you can't do this alone. Digital skills is really, really important. And what can we do to play our part in this? And that's great. So in the strategy, the digital strategy, we announced that we were going to have a digital skills partnership, and that was bringing together partners from across sectors to work just in a smarter way, in a more coordinated way. The landscape is pretty fragmented. How can we together work to make the sum greater than the parts? And the thing that I think, and again, this has come up a lot today, that could really change things is looking at it very much from a local lens. We've heard about regional disparities, we've heard about different issues in different regions, but this is about saying that there's some really great practice going on across the country to look at what your digital skills needs are, but the local piece around what local communities are doing, how can education and industry work better at a local level, I think is going to be really, really key to this, and also having more innovative solutions. So this is about bringing together that best practice and sharing that best practice. And finally, people say, well, this partnership, it's all very well, but how long will it last for? And I think it sort of misses the point. The point is, we can't foresee a point in time when we will have fixed this problem and it will all be okay. The point about it, and I think we've heard a lot about this today, is we have to change the culture. This is about how do you embed a new culture of collaborative working, both at a local level and at a national level, so that we really are equipped properly to face the challenges ahead.
Thank you. So there's a lot of stuff happening
lot of stuff.
across the spectrum. Yes, there's a need for really high-end technical skills, but also at the lower end, making sure that everyone has the skills to access technology and access the services that they need. Alina, from your perspective, what is Google doing and what do you think industry needs to be doing?
Well, I think from a general perspective, I think it's super important that industry works with government and with the third sector to tackle this challenge and opportunity together. From a Google perspective, we've been working on lots of different fronts. We've been working with government to help introduce the computer science curriculum and then make sure that the teachers have the right support and training in order to deliver the new curriculum. We've been working on educated small and medium businesses to take advantage of the digital opportunities that exist in order to grow their business, export, sell online, but also because we've seen that businesses who are digitally savvy grow twice as fast and hire more people. So I think there's a productivity perspective there that is worth looking at. But then we're also looking at how do we, as a tech company, ensure we have a good pipeline and ensure that anyone in the UK has the opportunity to pursue a career in computing science or tech should they want that. So we've been working on, that higher end, very digital skills savvy kind of end of the spectrum too, around how, whether it's encouraging women to go into computer science, where it's about helping developers understand the AI tools that will make their apps better and faster. So that's a wide range of skills and education work. What I tend to focus on, and I'd love to talk to you about, is Digital Garage, which is a very big project that we've started about 3 years ago, when we recognized that what we were doing in terms of skills and retraining was rather piecemeal. We were focusing on small businesses, but we realized, because those were our customers, we knew them, right? Customers sell and advertise on Google, so it's easy for us to talk to them. But we realized that the need is much higher than that. We had people come to our workshops who were just individuals who wanted to go from factory worker to photographer. They wanted to turn their hobby into a full-fledged business, and they didn't know what steps there were. And digital skills can help you there. It can help you, have your first blog, turn your blog into an e-commerce site, turn your e-commerce site into an export opportunity. So we came up with Digital Garage, which is both an online training platform, but most importantly, it's an initiative that brings one-to-one mentoring and workshop opportunities close to you, no matter where you live in the UK. For the last 2 years, we've visited over 200 locations across the country, bringing our experts in communities large and small to deliver digital skills training. In bigger metropolitan areas like Leeds, Glasgow, Cardiff, Manchester, we've actually opened big hubs that are open between 6 months and 1 year. We've moved our hubs on the high street. So you can imagine going on the equivalent of Oxford Circus in Manchester. We're actually on King Street in Manchester. And next to Primark, there's a Digital Garage shop. So it's prime real estate on the high street where people can just pop in, and there's nothing to buy. It's just free training. And there we offer training, everything from taking the first steps online, so learning how to send an email, open a social media account, send a tweet. And in Sheffield, we were very excited that we had actually 2 centenarians send their first email from the garage, and an 80-year-old grandma who was actually very into traveling but needed help. She had too many photos from her travels, and she was just like, I don't need any email or anything of this intro. I just want to save my photos to the cloud because I don't have any more memory on my phone. It's like, okay, great, no problem, we can do that. So you can get that entry level skills training, which is about boosting your confidence. We work with the Good Things Foundation, and they realize that when people know how to use online tools that are comfortable using search, for example, they can find discounts. They can check whether an energy supplier has a better offer than the one they're on. So there's that. We then do boost your career. So we offer things from learning how to write a CV and find a job online, to email etiquette at work, how to use spreadsheets, up to things like social media training, how to write for social media, if you want to make your way into the digital economy and have a more digital-focused job. And then at the other end of the spectrum, we have courses that sometimes run for 5 weeks long, which are especially organized for people who want a change in their career. So if you want to give coding a go, you can go to Manchester or Birmingham or Sheffield and do a 5-week free Google Intro to Coding class. Or if you want to start your own business, we have that as well. So it's a very large spectrum of training and one-to-one coaching that we offer. We now train about 2,000 people a week across the UK, and we've already reached more than 200,000 people. And what we deeply care about is to measure our work and not just measure it like actually we've done before, which is how many people do you train, but measure the impact. So we'll soon be posting new results on how many people have we helped either get a new job, get a raise, advance in their career, or if you're a small business, have we helped you grow your business, have more customers, or hire or create new jobs. So that's what digital skills are to us. Digital skills for us are a means to getting growth, whether it's your career or your business.
Thank you. That's really wonderful that there's so much happening in terms of getting people the very basic skills, but not measuring the impact in terms of the number of people that you've trained, but really the kind of impact that you're having on their lives and on their work. So on that, I'm going to ask Catherine to share her experience in the GLA as well as Corsham Institute.
Yeah, so I'll probably talk predominantly more about my experience at the GLA. I've just literally moved jobs about 3 or 4 weeks ago. So at the Greater London Authority, I was the Digital Skills Policy Lead. And in London, we're always very lucky in that we get lots of funding that comes through and we have the ability to do more flexible things than other areas in the UK, I would say. So we had some money that came via central government, and then we got some money from the European Social Fund. And we knew that there was a very pressing problem with the digital skills gap in the UK, but we were trying to navigate what exactly were our best efforts placed on in that area. Did we want to look at basic digital skills? Did we want to look at mid-level? Is it more about advanced? And actually, when you look at the data and the statistics, actually the problem is really quite prolific with the lack of advanced digitally skilled people going into the tech workforce, which is needed by all sectors of the economy. We decided to put our efforts into that. So I did the usual kind of like policy person thing of reading lots and lots of reports and going through lots of data and making up my mind about where it was best for us to place our efforts on, and then thought, hold on a second, I think we need to actually consult with the people who need these workers as well. So we built this big digital task force, and we had, for the majority, we had lots of corporate employers. And it was a very interesting process in that when you actually tried to articulate what the digital skills problem is, a lot of people couldn't really quite pinpoint it. So we knew that we needed to go down into a more granular level of detail of exactly what types of skills were we looking for. So LinkedIn were very kind in that they offered to do some pro bono work for us, and they produced an economic graph for London. And it is caveated with the fact that it's LinkedIn data, so it's only their platform users, which is a particular subset of our society. But it did allow us to analyse what were the kind of technical skills that were most in demand. Web programming is by far and large the most in-demand skill at the moment, but it went into quite a lot of detail about other skills, and that's available on the london.gov website. And we then thought, okay, well, how do you apply that knowledge that you've got around the granular level of skills and decide what types of occupations are really growing at the moment? And there is lots of data on this, but you need to have a regional specific view on it as well. So we needed to know exactly what does London need. So we did a big consultation piece with the tech partnership, and then we were able to articulate what those areas were. And when I thought about it a lot more clearly, I thought, okay, we've got to be really careful that we're not just talking about hard tech jobs here, but we're talking about digital tech, creative jobs, and how these are all interwoven and how the skills are applied to all sorts of different occupational areas. So we had occupations that went from web and software developers to highly skilled data specialists, cybersecurity specialists, and also digital marketing professionals. And it was quite a wide range. We had TV and film production, and it was all about entry-level roles. And what we were really trying to do in this is sort of copy what New York had delivered with their tech talent pipeline, but they had focused on adults who were long-term out of work, and they were trying to reskill them and get them back into jobs. What we knew our problem was in London was high rates of youth unemployment, which those from low socioeconomic backgrounds and from BAME communities in particular were suffering from. So we wanted to focus it on what we needed to do the most here. We also know that in the UK, the tech workforce is only made up of 17% women, so it's very heavily biased towards men who are creating all of the technology that we are using and is affecting everything we do, which is a very risky thing. So we wanted to do something that was going to try and actively move the dial on that. So we focused our funding on 16 to 24-year-olds who we wanted to benefit the most, and this is also because there's been a lot of discussion about the education sector today, which is brilliant, and lots of ideas around policy changes. It's very hard to implement those. When you go to the further education sector, there's actually quite a bit more flexibility in that area. So the college system in London had just gone through a very big area review process, and they know they needed to innovate. And we had some big policy reforms coming in with the, reforms around T-levels and technical education, and a real focus on us trying to strengthen and improve our vocational training offer. So what we did was then focus on commissioning new training But we knew that if we commissioned training that was still delivering the qualifications that were already being delivered, we weren't going to get different outcomes out of it. So our kind of outcomes framework that we were working towards was getting young people into jobs. And in order to do that, you have to fuse the delivery of and development of soft skills with the technical skills and attitudinal skills, raising aspirations. You need to really heavily support young people, particularly when they're from underprivileged backgrounds, to see that those jobs could really be for them and that they can really get there. And that's a lot of work. And you also need to kind of take away from that really kind of traditionalist qualifications, highly academic system that just really isn't right for a lot of people. And a lot of the feedback from the employers we were working with was, we don't actually care about them having a qualification. We want bright, young, enthusiastic people who can demonstrate that they've done digital stuff, they've got a portfolio of work, they want the job, and we want to work with them and we want to diversify. So there was kind of like a clear consensus that everyone was ready to get on board with this. So we then commissioned a new suite of training, and this was all about making sure that employers were leading the discussion. So similar to the new apprenticeship standards that have been delivered, it was about making sure that the training that we were creating, it had been approved and reviewed and created in collaboration with employers. And this wasn't easy to commission, I'd like to say. There was quite a lot of misunderstanding about what we were trying to deliver. And what we wanted to deliver was occupational related training, so very specific, that would lead to a job, because it's about plugging a jobs gap. And so we were asking people to come together in partnership. And I think there's been a lot of talk about collaboration today, which is really hard. But we were successful in getting quite a lot of collaboration going. And we were adamant as well that we had young people be part of that process as well. So it's still ongoing, this program. It's still being set up at the moment, where we're going to be hopefully testing out a new model of skills delivery for the capital. We've got Manchester, who are already replicating our approach that we've taken. Bristol is also looking at this now. So we're sort of trying to subvert the norm and test out something different. It has to be high quality, obviously, and we need to evaluate it, and there'll be a longitudinal study applied to it to see what works and what doesn't work, which I think is also really important. It's not just about being like, what a brilliant program, that bit of training worked. It's also saying like, well, that didn't work, unfortunately, and then supporting those young people to do something different, and just getting a lot of learning from it and sharing that and getting that rich data together. So yeah, it's a very big, exciting program. I should have said, it's called the Mayor's Digital Talent Program. It's ongoing. There are some offers on the website at the moment, and that's just going to grow and expand over the next kind of year or two.
Thank you. I think the digital talent pipeline is a great initiative to build those skills and get people the jobs at the entry level. So you've heard a lot of different perspectives around digital skills, some of the initiatives that are happening across government and from industry. We're going to go back to our Slido question around what does digital skills mean to you? And we've got the results. Most of you see digital skills as a way to solve problems and create solutions. It's about, and I think there's an equal number of people talking about digital skills as being able to use social media or communicate. So I'm going to ask the next question, which is around, who do you think, who should play the pivotal role in improving digital skills? Is it teachers? Is it policymakers, employers, or individuals? If you can, and I know we've talked about collaboration, so all these people need to work together, but the question is, who is the most important, or who plays a pivotal role? And if you can just vote now. And what we're going to do is, once we have the results, we're going to do a little bit of brainstorming exercise where the person, if you just stand up, it's been a long day, so if you I'll show you the results in a minute, but I'm going to explain what the brainstorm is going to look like. So if you can just stand up, and the person sitting next to you or just behind you, if you can, whatever. Okay, let's stand up because it's been a long day. So can we just show the results of the poll? Okay, so large number of you think that policymakers have a huge role to play when it comes to shaping digital skills. And employers and individuals seem to have equal setting in terms of making sure that people have the right skills, not just before they get the first job, but also throughout their career. And teachers also play a role. So while you're standing, talk to the person standing behind you or next to you, and just share one piece of activity that you think. So each of you voted for the person that you thought played a pivotal role. If you can share one piece of activity that this individual should do to make a difference within digital skills. And we'll just take some suggestions from the audience.
Oh, this is on you.
I know. We're all
We're down to you now, Navroza.
I guess we're the only people who can influence.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
true.
Yeah.
Well, we also have, like, the three of us have policy in our titles. So if that wasn't the case, we were like, probably should have reconsidered this panel, you know?
Hopefully that got some ideas and some exchanges going. So a lot of you, if I can just ask 4 comments from the room, one from a policymaker's perspective, one from an individual perspective, one from an employer's perspective, and one from a teacher's perspective. So if you can just stand up and shout out any ideas that you came up with. So who wants to talk about the policymaker? Okay. What's the one thing that they should be doing, in addition to everything you've already heard? So
make things possible, because they have the resources, so they can set the first domino in motion. They
Okay.
can make everybody aware.
Okay, thank you. Who wants to share something from an individual's perspective? Anyone? Did anyone vote on an individual? We did have some, yes. So what do you think individuals need to do that could improve digital skills?
I think the greatest resource I've found, at least for people my age, and admittedly I'm only 22, is the internet in general, because there are lots and lots of great free resources out there for people who are interested in improving their digital skills, particularly in coding, things like Code Academy and lots of websites which are just completely free and you can learn to do basic coding things on. So from an individual's perspective, that's a good place to start.
Thank you. So taking initiative and finding the resources online. Employer's perspective?
Love the anticipation. Oh dear, sorry. I'm massively self-interested in here because I'm represent an apprenticeship training provider. So we deliver from the London group, Tech City Stars, Future LDN, definitely heard of us. We're all about getting young people trained up in digital skills and tech roles. And I'm inundated with young people. Got 300-400 applicants every single month that want to work in London, that want to get trained up as a developer, as a digital marketer, as an IT support technician. I don't have enough jobs. I don't have enough employers willing to give the space for young people to make mistakes in those entry roles so that they can learn, develop, and grow.
Okay,
If
so
more employers gave young people an opportunity, in 5 years' time, we wouldn't have this problem now where every employer out there is investing millions of pounds in investing in cross-training people from accountancy into development, or spending them on recruiters to recruit them from any other companies.
So more jobs at entry level offered by employers. And
Yes.
from a teacher's perspective? Okay. Okay, so thank you for that. Hopefully, there is, yeah.
Thanks. I think we're talking here about playground to pension, and I'm going to focus on the playground end of it. And I think there's a huge amount of more that we can do with very basic digital skills at a very, very early age. And I think that the great things that happen with the change in the computing curriculum and getting rid of IT. I used to be an IT teacher, and very glad that went as much as it could. But I think what we need to do is make sure that digital skills are embedded into every single other curricular area in very early education as well.
That's a really good point, yeah.
Say something, because I've recently become involved in the T-panel.
Do you want to just take the...
The digital T-panel, for all my sins, but it has been extremely rewarding as an employer. I'm as an employer and an entrepreneur. I've been in the digital economy for 25 years. Probably some of you weren't born then. I think there is a very important role for the government, in my opinion. It is a very different positioning you will have to work at in terms of apprenticeships, because there is not the right understanding of the role of apprenticeships in many circles. And I'm also speaking here from the point of view of a very successful sixth form college in Cambridge, who don't want to be associated with apprenticeships because they are too good. They are providing people to Eton, to Oxbridge. And I think, in my opinion, that packaging these T panels, T levels, and apprenticeships is a big. It will be a big achievement for the government today.
So an image problem with how apprenticeships are viewed.
Yep.
Thank you. So,
Sorry.
one of the questions is, at what age should digital skills be taught, and what should be taught? From a policy perspective.
Oh, no, go.
Oh, okay. Where's that question come from? Has it come from you? Or?
No, so one of the ex-teachers mentioned that it should start very early on.
Yeah.
So,
Soon as.
yeah.
I mean, the thing is, like, kids now, even from when they're born, they're growing up with technology. The issue is that this is always the question. When we went through this big phase where everyone was calling children digital natives, now everyone's like, oh, no, they're not digital natives, because they aren't. But kids, like babies, they can use iPads. It's quite frightening in a way, but it's also really exciting. But it's about using that time when they start, learning other things as they join primary school, or even in early years training, to get them to use it safely. That's really important. Cybersecurity understanding, and an understanding of the kind of terms and conditions that are being used. I'm not talking for babies and tiny children, but that needs to start quite early on, where teachers and parents are explaining what they're doing when the children are utilising technology, which builds up that understanding, which builds the interest and their ability to utilise technology. And then it's about taking them on a journey where they become creators and makers, and they're active consumers and users of technology, not just passively on their phones without an understanding of where all their data's going and things like that. So it's as soon as possible, in my view.
Okay. Thank you. So,
Can I just add to that? And I think some of those skills as well that you give them at a young age. So we know, for example, those computational thinking, those problem-solving skills that they're getting through the new curriculum, is also helping them in other subjects as well, because they're thinking slightly differently. And actually, we've spoken a lot today about mindset, and having that culture of learning and wanting to learn new things and adapt to new things. And I think if you want a mindset so that when you leave school, when you leave university, when you leave and you go into the workplace, you have it, you want to learn. And I think that has to come from a very young age. And I think it's not just those digital skills, it's those broader skills that we've been talking about today. In my daughter's school, she's 6, and I was saying to Joysy earlier, one of her teachers, when she was on maternity leave, she read Carol Dweck's Mindset book. And when she went back to school, she said to the headmaster, this is amazing, why don't we do this? To teach kids that actually it's okay to really push yourself and want to learn new things. And it's okay if things don't go quite the way you want them to do, because that's learning and that's growing. So I think it's a much broader thing than just pure digital skills if we want to get that mindset right so that we have a continuous lifelong learning culture.
Yeah. That is absolutely right in terms of how do you change that mindset and whom do you target? Like there are all these different people who are involved in building digital skills, from teachers to parents, and we all have the role to play there. What do you think are the differences between different regions within UK when it comes to digital skills, and what is being done from a policy perspective to address those challenges?
It's really interesting. So since I've been working on Digital Garage, I've been able to go all across the country, from Scarborough to Blackpool to Port Talbot, for example. A lot of the differences, when you see differences, a lot it has to do with the difference in the industry, the main industry that is the big employer in the area. So, for example, we've seen that coastal towns have very specific digital needs because they have big kind of hospitality and tourism industries. Therefore, if you could go in there with a provision that talks, basically you deliver the same skills, but you talk in their language. Every single case study you use, you make it about a cafe, you make it about an Airbnb, a B&B, or about how do you promote tourism to your local attraction, your local gallery. So I think that's where we've seen differences. We've also, we go to Manchester and the mayor tells us, actually, the most advertised jobs here are creative industry and digital skills and tech jobs. We need the very high end of the spectrum. But other communities don't have those needs because employers aren't and the industry is not there. So having the right data is very important, and then having the flexibility to be able to adapt whatever your skills provision curriculum is important. And I think that's why collaboration is important, right? We, as a company, no matter how much we invest, we won't be able to do every industry and serve them with the right content. However, if we partner with a trade union to tell us about what they hear from employees, if we partner with the Federation of Small Businesses to tell us about the specific, small companies' needs, then we're getting to a better solution. And one of the exciting things about working with Navroza on the Digital Skills Partnership has been about making sure that, as when we're talking about the role of employers, making sure we're a little bit more coordinated, that what Google does in one part of the country is not necessarily replicated a month later by another provider, So should we not talk to each other a little bit more? The government is investing in developing new curriculum, new partnerships. Let's make sure that if you're looking at that from cradle to pension, that's a lot of years and that's a lot of different needs. So let's make sure we all slice it and dice it and make sure roles and responsibilities are clear. That'll make it easier for us too.
Yeah. From you.
Yeah, and sort of coming back to the local differences, I mean, there are regional differences, there's no doubt about that. And when I was talking about best practice, I wasn't suggesting we should just come up with one blueprint and say to everyone, use this. Actually, what we're saying is, use the data, understand how to collect the data, and then once you've got your data and you understand what your needs are, what do you want to do with it? How are you going to be innovative? So in places where there are a high proportion of jobs in the high-end sector, what are you doing for your young disadvantaged communities to get them into that roles? What are you doing innovatively that's different? So I think the role that government can play is to just help people understand better what to do with those regional differences.
Thank you. Any comments on regional differences? It's great that your program is being replicated in some other places.
And I mean, when we've taken the London approach, like I said earlier, we did a very specific consultation on London. We needed to know what London, but London's very special, isn't it? So it's a bit easier to do it here. I think it's a lot harder for the other regions. Manchester, when I had a chat with them, they wanted to understand what process I had gone through, and I was like, just take your time and understand the lay of the land before you go plunging into anything. Don't commission providers to do things until you understand there's a real need. Because I think everyone gets excited about particular occupations and digital skills, and it's all this like buzz, tech. But unless you actually understand, what the local businesses in your area need, then you can't tailor something to what the employers want. Like, even in London, I realised at one point we were only consulting with very big businesses, and the demographic of businesses in London are that 99% of the total are SMEs. So I was talking to the wrong people, so I then had to go and consult with the SMEs, and it's a long process to really get that kind of body of knowledge you need before you make the decisions, which I think is sometimes the criticism of government and policy making, but you have to do it, you have to be careful, because otherwise you waste a load of money, frankly.
Yeah. But there are also similarities, and the similarity, where no matter where you deliver skills training, is that you have to engage more or less the same people. So when we go into a new city, we talk to the local council. We talk, with the mayor's office. If there's a regional mayor. We talk to the FSB. We talk to the employers. We bring in job centers. Going in and navigating local government is hard, right? It's complicated. So if we can work with central government to kind of come up with a framework that can bring these people together, so industry can just tap into an existing framework, into an existing collaboration, that would make our jobs more from, concentrate more on the delivery rather than the work up front. So there's tremendous potential of learning and replicating, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So government has a role to play in terms of providing the incentives and the frameworks, but everyone needs to work together. So taking the point around data, so the tech industry is known for very poor record on diversity. Only 17% of the tech workforce is women. And when it comes to minorities, it's even worse. So what do you think is the problem? Why do we have such a big diversity problem when it comes to tech?
That's a good question. It's interesting that there's data on the gender disparity, but there isn't actually real data on the ethnicity disparity in tech. Obviously, it's a sensitive topic, I think, for people to be collecting data on, but it's kind of one of those things that people haven't really felt comfortable talking about. In terms of what the problem is around tech, I mean, tech is obviously a very exciting area to work on, and it's a very highly skilled area if you're going into a technology job. We all know that we live in a very unfair society that is biased towards, white people from affluent backgrounds who are highly educated, and that dial is changing, but it takes a long time to move that forward. I think the issue is, and I will be completely candid about this, is that a lot of the tech companies, as most of our big companies and other companies are, run at the top leadership level by white men who are highly educated, and they're not necessarily always to blame for this, but there is unconscious bias in everybody, and it's really hard to unpick what you think you want to get out of new employees and understand where you're making mistakes, which you might be doing inadvertently. I think there's a lot more discussion going on around that now. But certainly when I started engaging young people in the program I was developing, they could sense it as well, and they knew that they weren't going to necessarily be welcome in an interview, and that people were going to have made assumptions about them because of the way that they speak, because of the colour of their skin, because of just who they are, and I think that those issues need to be discussed a lot more openly. And we were working with a lot of companies to just try and kind of unpick that and say, what are the issues? And it's a sort of frightening area for people to admit that they've got an issue. I think the introduction of the gender pay gap and the requirement to report on that was a big step. We need to go further on ethnicity now, absolutely, and we need to encourage companies to admit where there is fault and give them tools to change, rather than it being a kind of a situation where we're going to hit them with a stick if they don't do what we think they should be doing. We've got to equip them to change, and I think that there's a big training need around there and a big cultural change, and people just need to start being a lot more open about it and honest.
Thank you. We're going to take some questions from Slido. So if we could just see what are some of the questions that you've asked in the audience. So how is Google keeping track of people to be able to measure the impact of its interventions over the long term?
Right now, we work with Ipsos, so we deliver skills training across Europe and Africa as well, and now the Americans are copying our model, which I'm very excited about. And in Europe, we work with Ipsos, and they do interviews with our alumni, with our trainee people who are gone to the garage. They interview them at 1 month, and then at 6 months, and then I think at 1 year. So it's how do you define long term? How do you get a person to kind of respond, to keep responding to a survey when they probably forgot they even did that training? It's hard, but that's where we're starting. So we are trying to look at, people won't change jobs in a week after you've done training. So having that measurement on the longer term is important. That's what we've done so far, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the data. But at European level, to give you an idea, across Europe, we've trained 3 million people in the last 3 years. And out of those 3 million people, data shows that we've helped create or get people into 100,000 new jobs, which I think is encouraging. It's not the biggest percentage, but it's meaningful. So we're looking at to see how that numbers look in the UK. And I think once we have that data, we'll be looking at forums like this to discuss what is the best methodology of measuring impact, because this is super important, right? We're talking about soft skills. Should you teach people soft skills? Should you teach them more technical stuff? Is digital skills an answer? What is it? We know that in the last decade, if you look at lower skilled and low paid individuals, only 1 in 10 people was able within a decade to escape that bracket, to go from underpaid to being able to make ends meet while being in a job. That's not good enough, right? So how do we all put our minds together to think about how do we help people get jobs that they enjoy and that pay? And when you look at the UK and its productivity issue, there's huge incentives there for every business out there to make sure their employees are more productive, and that must come with extra training. So for us, there's a real opportunity there.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I answer that? Can I comment on the one on diversity,
yeah,
if
sure.
that's okay? Because it is a really, really important issue. And what I don't understand about it is that all the data, all the research shows the benefits of diversity, that those companies that really embrace diversity, actually it affects their bottom line. They are more profitable. In policy making, you will get better policies delivered by more diverse teams. So there is maybe something about how do you convey that. It just makes business sense. Why are we not doing it?
I'd like to answer that, because I don't think, I would say that I work from, I bring a company's perspective. I don't think companies are the only problem. We have a pipeline problem. Until the 80s, we had more women graduating with STEM degrees than men, and that changed and dropped drastically from the 80s. Why is that? Is it because the opportunities were not there? Is it because incentives were not there? There was a shift of incentives, which it's not black and white. Google has been the first company to ever, from a big company's perspective, not just in tech, publish transparency reports. We wanted to show people that we have a problem and tell people, we thought we're going to tell people, look, we're solving it. Every year it gets better. Actually, the improvements we've done are super small. We're not moving at the pace we would want it to. And it's not because we're not tackling unconscious bias. We are. I do unconscious bias training every year. We have women's support groups at Google. We have ethnicity support groups at Google, and we have a lot of these conversations, but we can't solve it alone as employers. I think we should look at how we can work together and learn from each other.
There's definitely a pipeline issue. Still there are not enough girls going into STEMs, doing computer science. And actually there's something cultural around this as well, because in other countries, here girls are interested in studying those kind of subjects until about 10 or 11, and something happens. And I think the other thing, so one of the things that government is doing is to supporting the Tech Talent Charter, which is actually saying, companies, what are you doing in your recruitment practices? What are you doing in your HR practices, just to make it, just your job descriptions? Are you selling those things like this is about collaboration, the things that really appeal more to women than to men? How are you selling that?
And it's really interesting. At one point there was this pilot at Berkeley where they looked at how do you teach computer science. The curriculum was the same, but they changed the exam questions, right? The exam question was no longer take this financial mechanism and make it as productive as possible, like Wall Street kind of game theory challenges. They move to more social and economic kind of minded challenges. How do you solve inequality? Or and by asking just asking different questions, you teach the same curriculum. That saw an increase in women attending those type of courses. So that's really interesting. You know, sometimes you can have interesting interventions, very specific ones.
So I'm just going to take some questions from the floor. Yeah. Please keep the question very short because we have less than 4 minutes.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Thank you. I just wanted to talk about the diversity aspects of things a little bit, because our on-program learners are 51% female that are learning tech digital skills, and 51% is exactly the same number. It's really annoying.
Question.
From BAME backgrounds. And what we've done is we've changed the way that we recruit. We don't use CVs. We don't use interviews. You need to innovate to change the bias, the unconscious bias in recruitment. Okay?
That's how I got my first job in the UK as an immigrant. I went and applied for 60 jobs after graduating from university and got only 2 interviews. And it was a very hard time when you getting no's. And the one interview that I got accepted to was because they didn't see my last name. They didn't know where I was from. They didn't know I was not a native speaker. They gave me a test. So I was very, very grateful that I was given that opportunity to demonstrate what I can do.
Thank you.
I think also in our experience is that if we drop the IT, simply the 2 sounds from these jobs, and we stay with digital and we stay with data, we will see much more women, and you know it's already happening. But I think it is this bias towards IT which put people off. Put people, young girls, they still are being put off by the IT association.
Any other questions?
Thank you. So a couple of points really quickly. At Makers Academy, we have very similar numbers with females doing coding courses. And the reason for that, I think, is that we focus on inclusivity as opposed to selective diversity. And I think that's a really important issue. Very similar kind of processes here. The other thing that I want to raise is really important for me, which is the point that you made about apprenticeships. As an apprenticeship provider now, there is this big stigma attached to that as a second-rate qualification still. We are more selective statistically than Cambridge and Oxford University at Makers Academy. It's harder to get in to do our course than it is a degree there, and I think it should be reflected, and we need to do something about the perception of that across parents, schools, government, everyone else as well.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the floor?
I just want to make a point on that. So I think that's really important. And I think what I've noticed that is missing is really celebrating young people themselves who are successful, who are diverse, mixture of young men, young women from different ethnicities, different backgrounds, and giving them the platform to talk themselves. Like, you know, this is a brilliant event, but there aren't any very young people here. And I think it's always so important to have them included in the conversation and have them making the decisions as well about what's happening in the policies. Like, you know, as part of that program I was managing, we had this big group of young, we called them digital pioneers, and they were under 30, and they were all from completely different backgrounds. And we were asking them all the questions, and them just being consulted on it and feeling that they were taking a direct role in what was happening was really empowering for them. And then we designed the whole marketing campaign about actually having those young Londoners be the ones who were showing other young Londoners and other parents who might be from similar households to them, we're doing an apprenticeship in tech, or we're doing this, because they will be applying, but they're the ones who are in the know and know that apprenticeships aren't bad, but the majority of people, they do think that they don't want their kids to do apprenticeships, or kids aren't really sure what they are. So it's about telling the stories. I think that's the most important bit that you can do. And I think everyone, you know, teachers, parents, policymakers, everyone's got a role in doing that.
And on the other side of that, so the thing about a lot of feedback that we get from employers is that the apprentices are actually outperforming their graduates. They stay for longer.
Yeah.
They you know, so something around that, just that messaging about this is a really good thing for employers as well.
But there's also a really big problem with the way that apprenticeships, are set up at the moment, in that they're not working for small businesses. I'm City of London Corporation. We've recently run a pilot with a bunch of SMEs based in the city. If you're one person in HR, which is what so many of these organisations are, can you use the mic? It's hard to hear you. Sorry, I don't think it's. Is it working? Sorry.
Just hold it close to your.
It's just impossible to engage with apprenticeships, and the levy is not set up in a way that enables people to businesses, small businesses, to actually engage. There is a real problem around that.
So how can we enable the apprenticeship levy so that it's being used by small businesses as well? Any other questions? Who wants to take that around the apprenticeship levy and how small businesses can?
Well, I had a bit of experience in this, but I'm not an expert on that, on the SMEs. But we were trying to navigate that problem for London, because as I said, it's 99% SMEs, and we were like, oh God, how are we going to get them engaged in this? And I know that the City of London was doing that thing where you were trying to convene SMEs so that they could all pick a standard that they were all opting into, and it would make it more streamlined and easier for them. I have seen examples of SMEs navigating the system and the policies and getting there and doing it. And we were planning, this was before I left, we were planning a project where we helped share learning on that with other SMEs we were working with. But we needed other organisations, and we do need like think tanks, and we need other policy organisations and lobbyists to also tell those stories. And I'm going on about that a lot, but I think that's the only way that you can communicate communicate the story in a language that makes sense to people. Like the levy is a complicated system to navigate. I'm not going to deny that, but I think that I would say again that more people need to get involved in order to make that work. I think that there's been a huge backlash against central government on it, but just complain. No, I'm not saying you're complaining, sorry, but just complaining about it isn't going to solve the issue. It's about using the knowledge that you have if you are involved in that space, and then working with others to try and make it work. I think that's all that can be done, and then feeding that back to central government in order to take the policy forward in a way that's more manageable, makes more sense for people, I think.
Thank you. We're going to do one final Slido poll. So if I can ask you all to take out your phones and do an evaluation. So basically, we want to learn from this event. So if you could just fill out this short poll that will help us understand what did you like, what should we be doing differently next time we organize this event. And once you've done that, we'll ask the panelists for their final thoughts on one takeaway from this session. So if I can just ask each of you to make your final comments on your takeaway from the session.
Okay, I think I had a few. One is I absolutely agree that government has a pivotal role in all of this. We are the people who can influence in all of these areas. And the points about messaging and our role in messaging, we shouldn't underestimate how important that is. Catherine's reminded me about the importance of role modelling in terms of getting messages across as well. And finally, I think we are on the right track in terms of local collaboration and learning from what works and what may not work.
Thank you.
Well, I used to work in PR, so my learning is also around communication and how important it is. You know, we're obviously not doing a good enough job communicating the tech opportunities for women. You know, I think we need to learn and continue to reiterate there. On apprenticeships, we need to do a better job there. We actually offered our first software engineering apprenticeships ever globally in the UK. We didn't fill the positions, you know. We couldn't recruit. and everyone else is saying there's so many people. Obviously not the right partners in the room, so we need to get better partners. That's a learning for me.
Mine would probably be related to young people and equality and opportunities. I think an important thing maybe for everyone to think about, and I try to do this as often as I can, and I've learned a lot from this, is to ask yourself if you do think you have any prejudices or you have any discriminative thoughts or feelings about young people. I think that young people get such a bad rap quite often and aren't included in the conversation and aren't given the opportunities that they should have. And I think if we were all a little bit more open and accepted where we might fall down in this area and try and address that, we could probably change things a bit more.
Thank you. Thank you for a really interesting discussion around digital skills policy, what digital skills mean, and how we can all work together to make change happen for young people. Thank you very much. So now if I could ask you all to go to the lounge, there'll be some closing remarks and a drinks reception. Thank you very much. Thank you.